So as part of my work, I talk to thousands upon thousands of people that are going through this journey of deconstruction. And again and again and again, people ask, am I going to be okay? What's happening to me? Where am I going? How does this end? Am I going to lose my faith in God? Am I going to go to hell? Am I going to become an atheist? Am I going to go back to Christianity? What will happen? And as we covered in the prior video of what is deconstruction, I can't give you a black and white answer on where you will end in your faith, in your spirituality. A lot of people will try that, as we covered in the reconstruction video, but I can't do that. I honestly can't tell you how this ends for you. I can tell you a whole host of things, like it gets better, it gets easier, you find peace with the journey. People end up where they want to end up, generally speaking. They might not end up where they would have wanted to end up. You know, in the past as a Christian, I imagine that most of Christians would not say they want to end up as an atheist. But the one who does end up as an atheist, generally speaking, comes to peace with that and wants to be an atheist. Ultimately, you are in charge of this process. You are in charge of your journey. Just that is a hard thing to navigate. Generally speaking, most people that grew up in conventional Christian worlds aren't in charge of their own journey. Now, of course, on some level they are, but they forfeit that. They give that up to give over their journey, their autonomy to a greater thing than them. Christianity, God, the Bible, the pastor, their leaders, their accountability, their peers. You know, there's an element of giving up your own desire, your own dreams, your own wishes, your own rational thought even to find peace and security and safety in this faith. And so there is it's a hard thing to grasp, to suddenly have your own autonomy, to have to make your own decisions, to find that you are the authority, that you can still find other authorities, you know, so you can look to someone and go, oh, I'm going to give you an authority to speak into my life because you're an expert in a certain area. But you're not just given an authority and have to accept it. You're not just told, well, this is the pastor and he knows everything and just do what he tells you. So this is a really, really complex time for most people that go through deconstruction. There's a lot up in the air. You're going through a radical shift of the way of life. It's not just a few beliefs that get upturned. As you step out of believing as conventional Christians do, what happens is you are generally going on a radical shift in the way you see the world. I often use a developmental theory called spiral dynamics to explain this. Now, just briefly, I'll go over this because I think it's really helpful for people that are going through this journey to understand what's happening to them on a very psychological level. As I said, I can't tell you where you will go, but I can tell you what's happening to you on a psychological level as you go through this process. Basically, there's hundreds of different developmental models. All throughout the world, people have been developing developmental models for the last 100 years or so. And a developmental model is when people look at humanity as a whole, groups of people as a whole, and say, how do they develop as time goes on in the way they think about X, Y, or Z? So one that most people will have heard of is the hierarchy of needs by Maslow, right? So that's a needs developmental model. It's how people progress as they grow up, and as they fulfill one need or one level, they move on to the next level. So once they have fulfilled, I'm safe, I've got food, I've got drink, they move on and they want to fulfill the next level. And you can only move on to the next level and live in that next level when the prior levels feel safe and are certain. And you can quite quickly drop down to the lower levels if suddenly maybe you lost your job and you're not sure how you're going to feed your kids. That quickly will bring you right down to, okay, I need to make sure I get food and drink. So you've got models like the needs developmental model by Maslow. You've got models like ego development by Cook-Greuter or Lovinger. You've got models like moral developmental theory by Colbert, you know. So there's different things that show us that we develop in stages. So something like moral development is really interesting, a bit of a sidetrack, but it'll give you an idea of what we're talking about. Early on, morality is quite mystical and magical, and we're not sure why we do things, but we incorporate some mysticism in things because we don't understand things. Later on, we start to decide that there is rules and structures around all this morality, and we must do the right thing. because the gods will be angry. Maybe we'll go to hell. Maybe we won't go to heaven. The very earliest stages, maybe you do whatever the heck you want. It doesn't matter, you know? So there's these logical steps in a healthy progression. And then what happens as time goes on is you go, well, actually, maybe I'll be moral beyond just a future reward, because I want to be a moral person. I want to be someone that does the right thing. So I'm not doing it to be rewarded by heaven or to avoid hell. I'm doing it because I want to do the right thing. And so that's another stage of growing up, of developing in your morality. So the one I want to talk about right now, and there's, like I said, there's hundreds, but one that I like to talk about is something called spiral dynamics, which is a value developmental model. And so it's how we have internal values and how they develop as we grow up and develop psychologically. And the reason it's so important is values are so broad, right? They can cover entire societies, entire groups. They also cover our individual selves. And so what you'll see is as people grow up, and I'm not going to go through the whole model, I've got a whole set of teaching on this, 15 hours of teaching on my podcast or on YouTube. So check that out if you're interested. I'll link in the links below. But what happens is, generally speaking, most people that are in conventional Christianity are a stage called conventional. In spiral dynamics, this is stage blue. They give them colors rather than names because they don't want an association of negative or positive. With any name, we might think, oh, conventional, that's bad, or we might think, oh, conventional, that's good. So they tend to use colors. But every stage is important. Every stage is good. It just isn't always good at every point, right? Just as the hierarchy of needs is good to find food, but it's not good if you're still finding food when you've been full for 3 days and you just keep eating, right? You go, oh wait, I should probably stop eating and I should move on to development and developing something else. In the same way, in spiral dynamics, maybe early stages are about developing your ego and finding power in yourself, but that can be very unhealthy if you stay there always. You're going to become a narcissist. So you need to grow up and you need to learn, oh, this is how I work in a group, and this is how rules work, and structure and organization and discipline and loyalty. And this is the sort of thing that happens at conventional stage. Conventional stage is all about finding security and safety and comfort. And it's very common for people that are conventional Christians to be at this stage. At conventional stage, you look to authority figures, whether it's a religious text, a god, a king, a pope, a pastor. You look to an authority figure that's given to you, and it's just been told, this is the authority, this is the one that knows the right way to live life. If you do what they say, you will be rewarded. If you don't do what they say, you will probably be punished. And it's very focused on fitting in and on surviving as a group, as an organism. And as I'm describing this, you can think, yeah, that sounds like a lot of conventional Christians. It maybe sounded like me, right? I was a conventional Christian for a long time, and I was definitely at that conventional stage. I was very much about fitting in into the group, operating within the rules and doing what was right, avoiding what was wrong, pleasing God, hoping to be rewarded in the future with heaven, avoiding hell, definitely at all costs. What happens, though, is at each stage, at certain points, there becomes a transformational dilemma. And what happens is we fully kind of work out that stage, and we get to the point where we've lived in that stage long enough that we start to hit a ceiling and go, there's not really much room for me to grow. I feel a bit contained. I feel like there's something more to this. And I'm noticing some problems with this stage. This stage doesn't do everything for me. I need to grow, right? So at the stage before conventional, which is often called ego or power, it's stage red in spiral dynamics, it's a healthy stage to develop a self, an identity, to know what you want, to know what you don't want, to go after what you want. But if you just stay in that stage long enough, what happens is you become a bit of an egomaniac, right? You become the narcissist. You can be violent. You can be quite aggressive and just take what you need. It can land you up in jail, or you can become a warlord if you stay at that stage. And so as they hit their ceiling, they realize, gosh, I need to work in the group a bit better. This doesn't work for me fully, actually. And just me always trying to get what I want actually fails me sometimes. Might even end with me getting deposed or beheaded. So I need to figure out how to work in a group. And so it moves into that next stage of conventional and starts to build a bit more of a healthy, stable environment for itself. So it's a healthy growth. This happens in children as well. So stage red would be quite young, maybe like between the ages of like 2 to maybe 4 would be sort of stage red. And then as they go out of that and they start to develop empathy puberty, between the ages of 4 and 6, they start to move into stage blue and want a bit of that conventional safety and security and certainty, and they want some rules and regulations. They want to operate in the family. They stop just screaming no, 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 no all the time, and they realize, well, actually, if I talk, if I ask, I might get my way as much, and actually people might not end up hating me a lot of the time. What we're looking at when it looks to deconstructing Christians is the transition out of conventional into the next stage. We go out of blue into a stage called orange. And orange is often called modern, it's called autonomous, it's called individualistic, it's called rational. There's a lot of names for this. Again, I don't like to focus on the names because some people think that's positive or negative, or they try and place one level above the other as better or anything like that. And as I said, none is better than the other. They're just better than the other at different times, okay? So if someone runs in with a gun and starts shooting, you're going to drop to your most base level where you look for safety and you are looking for, how do I make sure I live to the next moment? You're glad you have that developmental stage in you, right? You're not looking for the highest developmental stage where you're looking at it esoterically and trying to figure out how we can build a systemic situation where gun control is in place and people wouldn't be able to run in with a gun. That's not important in that moment, right? In that moment, you're thinking, how do I live to the next moment? And so every stage has importance at different points in our lives and at different points of our day. Okay, so we shift from that conventional stage to the orange stage, the modern stage. And the modern stage came about initially on the scene for humans around the time of the Enlightenment. And it realizes that the issues with stage blue, it has a lot of positives. It helps create stability. It builds beautiful communities in a lot of ways. It's taught that egomaniac at red to love. Now, its love is quite exclusive, right? It's very limited. There's quite a small in-group. But that in-group is very loving and caring, that family dynamic, that church, that city. It could be that country, right? If you're very nationalistic, you're probably very blue in a lot of ways. So it's very small in its extension of love and acceptance. But love and acceptance is a big step up from being an egomaniac and a narcissist, right? And so a lot of good things came about blue. But you start to realize, hey, we're being quite exclusive. Blue. It realizes, gosh, there's actually more going on in the world than just my little group. And it starts to realize, my authority figure isn't as knowledgeable about everything as I thought. Actually, there's very knowledgeable people around the world in certain areas that are much more knowledgeable than my pastor, right? Your pastor is not likely to be an expert in linguistics or epidemiology, or, you wouldn't go to your pastor for heart surgery. You would go to a heart surgeon and you know that the heart surgeon is going to do a better job. And so orange starts to think very rationally. It challenges, it questions, it looks for its own individuality as well. It starts to say, you know what, it's good that I'm a part of this healthy community, but I give up a lot of my own individuality and my own desires, my own dreams to fit into this community. I'm giving up a lot now for a future reward that I'm not entirely sure I'm going to get. And so it starts to ask all these questions. It starts to explore, what does it look like to be my own individual, to be my own autonomous self? And that transition can be really hard. It's very exciting. It's very new. It's wonderful. You step into all kinds of growth and questioning and learning, and you start to build your own self-identity and develop yourself more. You can start developing your own things and dreams and passions. And so it's a very wonderful and beautiful stage. This is a very healthy progression. It's a very good thing, but it's a very scary thing. You have also lost certainty and safety and security that comes from being within a bit more of a boxed-in structure, within a structure that gets absolutes given from on high, and this is the way it is, and if you just do this, you'll get this. That's a nice feeling. That's a really healthy and a place to be feeling safe and certain and secure. But it's not enough. And so people move beyond that. And that's what's happened for those that deconstruct. What's happening is they're going through this psychological shift where they've hit the limitations of that blue stage and they're moving on into orange. Now, when we move on, we keep all the prior stages. Like I said, blue is still a part of you. Red is still a part of you. The prior stages before that, the very most primitive stages where you are literally just thinking, how do I eat and drink and have shelter? Those are still a part of you, right? I guarantee if you start running out of money, you're going to very quickly start thinking, how do I pay my rent? How am I going to eat? How am I going to feed the kids? Those are still very much a part of you. You still have that ego that was developed at stage reg. You still have that desire for security and some rules and some regulations, some structure. We all like that. We like to be loyal. We like to be disciplined and do those things. Like, those are healthy things in the right contexts. So as we grow, we learn to contextualize the prior stages and bring them with us. A lot of people call this transcend and include. Ken Wilber, you've maybe heard it if you're in the Christian world, you'll have heard it through Rob Bell, Richard Rohr. They use the same language, the Ken Wilber, transcend and include. And so as we move into orange, we're transcending those limited ways of seeing life, that living under an authority that tells you what you should believe. But we're also in some way moving beyond feeling absolutely certain and secure and safe. And that's really scary. It's really, really scary. And so there's a few things I want to say. Okay, this is not the final stage. We continue to move on. Each stage is not better than the prior. You can't look at how developmental models work and just look at the very last one and go, if I was that, I'd be a healthy, happy human. It's not true at all. You can be very flawed and have developed a lot in your psychology and in your value system. Okay, so it's not about growing it up as fast as you can and getting to the later stages or whatever. It's not that at all. Every stage is right for different people at different times. And so you will find that being in this stage of orange is really important for you right now. That's where you are. That's what's important to you. It's important to your development that you go through this stage of learning to reclaim a bit of your autonomy, to learning to look at things a bit more rationally, question things, to figure out what do I believe and can I be so certain about this or that, to question your authority figures and go, do they really know everything? Those are really important things that you're going to have to develop. Questioning, well, yeah, these rules and regulations can be helpful in certain contexts, but surely there's context here, and sometimes they're not helpful, and sometimes we need to step beyond that. Things like, yeah, okay, I understand why that was illegal 4,000 years ago, but can we admit that 4,000 years on, maybe some things have changed and we should look at it in a different context? So you can look at it and go, yeah, of course, virginity was important to people getting married, 4,000 years ago, because women were property, and you had to ensure that the child that they bore was definitely your lineage, because lineage was how all money flowed and all power flowed, and of course you had to ensure that your daughter was a virgin because you were selling her to a human. Selling her as property to a human, a male. But we then, in the 21st century, can maybe start questioning that. People at stage blue don't question that. They just go, well, no, God says that virginity is important, which of course is not a massive thing that comes up in the Bible. It's just the culture of the Bible. It's the culture of when the Bible was written. But they can't see that. They just go, no, God says virginity is important. We must uphold that. We must not have sex when we go on dates. Of course, no one went on dates in the Bible because people were bought and traded in marriage. Even in the poorest of contexts, you didn't go on a date with someone and fall in love and then get engaged and then get married. It's like, that's not how it worked in that culture. It was pretty brutal. You wouldn't want to go back to a biblical marriage model, trust me. So the point is that at stage orange, you can start looking at that and going, it's kind of a bit weird, because women aren't property anymore, and we marry for love, not for familial, relational power dynamics and financial incentive and gain. And also we've got contraception. So of course, I can, not have a child or make sure I have a child with the person I want to. Lots of things have changed here. So we need to recontextualize this and look at it in a different way. And yeah, there might be some components about how the Bible suggests you do a relationship that might be really healthy, but they're contextual, right? And so this is a sort of work that the stage orange is going to start doing. It's going to contextualize those prior stages, and it's going to grow and develop in its ability to have these conversations, ability to look at these things in new ways. And this is so important as we understand ourselves, what we're going through. So like I said, I can't tell you where you end up. I can't tell you what your spirituality will be in the end. But I can say, if you study developmental models, you can at least say, this is how I'm going to grow up psychologically. This is how I'm going to develop. So the stage beyond orange, and a lot of you will be in this stage as well. You're never in one stage. Usually you kind of tiptoe amongst a few different stages within different parts of you. But a stage beyond orange is called green, and it's most commonly called postmodern or pluralistic. And stage green starts to go, gosh, I've grown so much. So at orange, the limitations as we grow, we start to develop ourself, and we start to become something so much better than I could have been at stage blue, and I'm growing, and I'm more intelligent, or not intelligent, but more rational, more able to think for myself, more able to figure out who should be an authority in my life and who shouldn't be. And I'm really learning to, my way is amazing, and I'm enjoying being my own individual. But there are limitations to it. You know, the limitations start to come about, and you start to realize, gosh, I miss that community a lot, though. I'd really love to start having community, but I don't want it to be that exclusive community. I want it to be a more inclusive community. I want it to be open to everyone. And so the next stage becomes much more broad in its expansive inclusiveness, and it starts to think about other people a lot more. Orange, at its worst, can sometimes be a bit selfish, can sometimes be a bit insular. If you look at this as a society, stage blue runs right through until maybe probably 1800s really, and then we see the emergence of stage orange, which ultimately in its best and worst forms is capitalism. It's this individual, you can do it, you can build something, you can develop something if you put your mind to it, you focus on it, you develop it, you can rationally figure it out. It's science, it's capitalism. These are good things that have brought us to a lot of very, very healthy places. But as it develops, we start hitting the problems. And so this is like people mention late stage capitalism, right? So once you get to the end of this process, you go, oh, this can be really problematic though, and very toxic and very harmful. With a lot of these stages, as we go on, we look back and go, gosh, there's a lot of unhealthy stuff in there. Really unhealthy. So maybe you might look at something like slavery. As orange became a dominant force in the world, countries that became orange, all of them ended slavery. It might have taken them a bit of time, but that process of them becoming more rational, understanding individual rights and going, gosh, wow, it's not just about my little group, white people, my little group, Christians, my little group, Americans, my little group, my family. It's about all of us. We're all individuals and we're all important, right? And so suddenly slavery must be abolished. But we didn't really do much about racism, did we? We really didn't. And so actually we start to see as we keep moving forward in orange, we start to go, gosh, there's limitations here. We have not fixed these issues. We have not worked on these issues. And so stage green, as it becomes more inclusive, as it starts building communities that are broader, as it looks beyond its little group of white people, people from Cleveland, people from America, people in the West, this can be a very limited way to see the world. As it opens up a bit broader, it starts to go, gosh, we have a lot of work to do. And so at green, you're going to see an emergence and an explosion of social justice. Social justice came on the scene in orange, but it really comes about in full fruition at stage green. And so again, we start to see these stages of development and growth where we go, oh gosh, I'm developing, I'm growing, I'm becoming more healthy, more inclusive, more loving, more stable and solid as I become a more developed human being. And so I can't tell you what your position will be on those social justice issues. I can't tell you what faith you'll have as you move into those new communities. But I can tell you that these are the stages that we grow through. These work, the studies that involve these, they look at tens of thousands of people, and there's hundreds of developmental models, and they all overlap and move in the same direction. The direction is always the same across all cultures, all communities, all throughout the world, and even all throughout certain times in history. And so we see that you can be quite certain that you're going to grow up in a very linear way in a lot of ways. Some people stop growing up, some people stop moving forward unless they have big challenges in their life. A lot of people don't hit these transformational dilemmas unless they have some big challenge. When we talked about why do people deconstruct, we talked about how much of that is often a profound impact of someone loving them, but even more often, a profound impact of some form of suffering. Usually it requires something like this for you to hit a limitation and start to realize, I need to move beyond the stage I'm at. I need to broaden my mind and look at things a bit more openly. And so this is what you're going through. And the reason I've spent so much time on this, you might think, God, what the hell are you talking about, Phil? Why the fuck is this important? It really is very important, trust me. It's important so you understand yourself and what you're going through. But what we're going to look at in some of the future videos is we're going to look at things like, how do I talk to my family? How do I tell people that I have deconstructed? How do I come out as holding a different position than a conventional Christian? Things like that are so hard to do unless you start to grasp things like developmental theory, unless you start to grasp, gosh, I'm not having a conversation orange to orange. I'm having a conversation orange to blue. They don't think the way I think. I have to try and figure out a way to communicate to the stage they're at. A good way to see this, right, is we might look at age, and you might think, well, a 5-year-old is not worse than a 15-year-old, and they're not worse than a 60-year-old, right? That you just are the age you are at the stage you are, and you know what you know, and you've learned what you've learned. It's not that a kindergarten lesson is bad and a university lesson is good. It's just that a kindergarten lesson is the best thing in the world to someone at kindergarten. But if you're a university student, you probably find it a bit dull. And on the flip side, a university class is very good to someone that's at university or college. But it's probably very unhelpful to someone in kindergarten, right? And so age isn't important. Your stage of development isn't good or bad. It just is what it is. But let's look at that a bit closer. If you were if you were 15 and you had to talk to someone that was 5 about maths, you're not going to talk to them about the algebra you're learning in high school, right? Because someone at 5 is probably barely learning to, count and do some basic addition and subtraction, maybe, And so the conversation you're going to have, you have to stop, take a step back and go, okay, I can't talk about the things that I'm aware of and that I know, algebra and things like that. I have to get into the mind of a 5-year-old. I have to look at that person at a different stage and go, what do they understand? How do they understand it? How do I explain it? Might be an even better example to explain something like how the world works. Maybe you want to talk to your kids about sex, right? You're going to have a different conversation if you're a 40-year-old, a different conversation with your 15-year-old kid than a 6-year-old kid, right? So with a 15-year-old kid, things might get quite explicit as you explain things and you go, hey, this is what it looks like. This is what you're dealing with. This is what is going on. These are the ups. These are the downs. These are how you have these conversations. This is what sex looks like. It's going to be messy and all kinds of wonderful things. You're not going to go into that detail with a 6-year-old. They're not at the stage where they can understand those things. They're not at the stage where they have developed in their body to understand these things. They don't have those hormones rushing around in the same way. And so you're just not needing to have that same conversation. So you figure out what stage people are at and you come and meet them where they are. It's the same principle we're dealing with when we talk to conventional Christians when we have moved beyond that. And when I say move beyond that, I don't mean that we have stopped being blue. We still have all of that blue within us, and if we're going to be healthy, we need to maintain that blue in its right context. So it's not that you're better than that person, you just have moved to a place where blue doesn't serve you anymore. You need orange to keep growing and keep developing. But blue is serving that person right now, and they can't move on to orange yet. They need to keep moving in blue. You can't move on to high school till you graduate middle school, right? You need to finish that process before you can move on. And so we need to be really careful we're not trying to drag people into our current stage. Anyway, that's a sneak peek of what we'll talk about when we start talking about how to interact with other people about our process of deconstruction. And I hope you can see that this is really important for how we understand our own journey, and it can make us feel a bit safer and a bit more secure about where we're at. What we're going through is really normal. Everyone in the world goes through this process of growing up, of developing psychologically, of moving through hard transitional seasons, of finding good parts and bad parts and dealing with all of those ups and downs. That's really normal. How it's affecting your spirituality is actually just a small part of it. If you actually take a step back and look at it, you're probably finding that this affects how you think about science, how you think about politics, how you think about family, how you think about sex. All these different things are being influenced. And so this is a massive shift that you're going through. It's normal to feel terrified and unstable and like you're going all over the place. That's really, really normal. And it's okay. Try not to panic. If you want to study these models a bit more, they can be really helpful for you to understand the journey you're going through, to figure it out. Like I said, don't fall into the trap of just trying to move into later stages thinking that's better. It's not. You need to go to the stage you're at. Right? Don't be the 5-year-old that wants to go to high school, only for the high school student to know, gosh, I wish I was 5 again, right? I mean, we all realize that there's good and bad at every stage, right? And so recognize that, but also think about it when you're looking at these developmental models, think about them as to how they can help you interact with other people as well. Because every person you talk to is somewhere on this journey of growing up, of developing, of building stage upon stage upon stage. And while they might be able to interact on different stages they have already moved beyond, they are not able to interact at a stage level beyond where they currently are. So just as maybe you might be a stage orange, you can probably, if you get into the right mindset, you can go back and meet someone that's quite narcissistic and egocentric at that stage red, and have a conversation with them, understand and go, gosh, yeah, on some level I can remember what it was like to be trying to build my ego and be a bit selfish and things like that. Yeah, I can understand that. But they're not going to understand what it's like to be at stage orange. They're not going to understand what it is to be driven by rationality and figure out your own autonomy without harming others, and to put others before yourself at times. And, these really complex later stage ideas are not accessible to someone that is still learning very basic parts of being human. And so, of course, most of us have grown up beyond stage red, okay? The vast majority of us have. And so you're not going to deal with many people like that, maybe an occasional narcissist or a toddler. But generally speaking, most people are going to be at that stage blue or further along. To give you an idea, that stage blue, if you're looking at America right now, about 60% of America are at stage blue or lower. So it's a very, very dominant amount of people. Now, that's a center of gravity. That's the majority of their makeup, because lots of us are at blue and orange and a bit red, and we kind of operate in a lot of those different stages at once. You might maybe, when hearing those descriptions, think, gosh, I'm orange, yeah, but I'm also really green. Yeah, definitely. And so you're going to be a mixture. But when we look at the overall, when you look at your day-to-day life, how you think, how you operate, the bulk of that, what is it driven by? The bulk for the majority of Americans is still at stage blue or lower. Okay? Now, a lot of people are at stage orange, and a lot of people are centered at stage orange, where the bulk of their thinking is stage orange. And there's quite a few people at stage green in America as well, and beyond, of course. And so it's not as black and white as if you look at every person in your country and go, oh gosh, they're probably at blue. Not at all, but it gives you an idea that there's a lot of people out there that are. And as someone that's grown up in a conventional Christian home, you probably will find that most of your friends, most of your family, the community you've built in your church, the kind of bubble, are going to be very centered on stage blue. They're going to be very centered on that authority figure that gives the rules, that they follow the rules to get the rewards in the future, to fit in this community, to have safety, certainty, and security. Those are really important things to them. And so you're going to want to understand that stage as best you can, and you're going to want to understand the stage you're at as best you can. And then you're going to want to look at the stage you're most likely going to grow into at some point and expose yourself to that kind of thinking and that kind of thought. A general rule of thumb is that you disdain the stage you've left and you fear the stage that you're moving into. And so when you look at these different stages, you're going to find that on the whole, you look back at stage blue, that conventional stage, and you disdain it. You look down on it. You think it's crappy, it's patriarchal, it's sexist, it's racist, it's kind of lost in its magical, mythical thinking, and I'm much more rational than that. There's lots of looking down on that prior stage, and in some cases that's very well founded. Like, yes, it can be very sexist, racist, etc. There needs to be contextualization of that stage. You need to look at the prior stage and try and understand what was healthy for me in that stage, what did get developed in that stage that's healthy, and understand that that's probably why other people are at that stage still, because it serves them and because it's where they're at. And yes, look at your own stage and live in your stage and fully embrace your stage and work in your stage, because that's how you're going to keep growing and eventually transcend and include this stage. You're only going to find its limitations if you keep growing here. But as you look forward, you might find that the next stage is quite scary to you. you may have some fear towards it, because we tend to fear what comes ahead and what we don't understand. It's very hard to understand the next stage. That's why I say maybe read some books or expose yourself to people on YouTube that are at the stage ahead of you. And this is why, generally speaking, when you talk to someone at stage blue, where you've come out of and you're now in orange, you're going to look at blue and you're going to disdain it. It's going to be your natural response to disdain it a little bit and maybe speak down, maybe be quite critical of it. That's not going to help in your interaction with those family members, with those friends. It's not going to build that relationship in any positive or constructive way. It might require that you make some boundaries and you don't have those conversations at all for a while. We'll talk about that as we go into more relational components. But disdaining and looking down on the prior stage is something that you're going to have to work in and work through. But also remember that just as you fear where you may go and you don't understand, that's where you are for those people. The people at stage blue are fearful of where you are. They don't understand it. They can't comprehend it. And so understand that you're coming to them with some really, really scary stuff. They are scared. They are freaking out. And so try as best you can to make those people feel safe. We'll go into that in a future video in a lot more depth. But I hope this has been helpful as just a rough overview of what's going on in my mind. What is the journey I'm going on? What is happening? People ask, is there a roadmap for deconstruction? Not at all. You're going to go all over the place. You're going to explore wherever you have curiosity. You're going to ask questions no one else has asked and go in that direction. And then someone else, your friend, is going to deconstruct and they're going to ask totally different questions and go in a different direction. That's the normal part of deconstruction. But what I can say is if you look at developmental models, you'll at least understand what's going to happen to the way I see, the way I think. Not what I think, but the way I engage with these ideas. It's going to be really helpful for you. As I said, I've got a very in-depth series on the spiral dynamics theory. It's got a lot of it focuses as well around Christian thought, and so how people can hold on to their Christian thought as they go through a spiral. That might not be important to a lot of you deconstructing, but to some deconstructing, they really want to hold on to Christianity. And they go, well, is it possible to still be a Christian and hold on to rationality and redefine what authority figures look like and stuff? And so I've tried to help people see what that might look like for them if that's really important to them. But it's certainly a great exercise to study that and to look at that. And so if you want to, it's free. It's on my podcast. It's on YouTube. And so do make yourselves make avail of that and enjoy it. It really will help you. I have every faith that it will give you somewhat of a roadmap, as at least of your own internal journey, not maybe what you believe and how you live fully, but it might give you something to hold on to and make you feel a bit safer as you keep moving forward. All right, that's enough from me. I love all of you. I'll see you again in a future video. Peace. If you are deconstructing, there is no reason to do this alone. It can be an incredibly lonely process, but the deconstructionnetwork.com is a free resource to help you find others deconstructing in your local area. If you would like to support what I do, everything I do is for free, from talking to people for hours on end to producing resources and podcasts. It is only possible because people give generously. There's never any need to give. It will always be free, everything I do. But if you do, we do have an amazing private community group that we talk on over on Discord that you would gain access to. And we do regular audio and video chats on there as well. So it'd be great to see you in there. But of course, never any requirement. And of course, please, please, please come and talk to me on Instagram. I love connecting with people. I love helping people on their journey. If you need a safe space to process your deconstruction, I would love to connect. It's just at Phil Drysdale. Love every one of you. Peace.